A few weeks ago, I made a video about how the polar vortex was literally falling apart, and I talked about how at some point in the near future, this would have major impacts on our weather patterns here in the United States. Well, here we are. Welcome to the near future. Over the next week, we are going to see storm after storm slam into the West Coast and travel across the country. This will trigger a major overall weather pattern shift that will send a massive blast of cold air across the US and set the stage for a very interesting week or two of wild weather. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Things are going to start getting interesting as early as Thursday. And during the day on Thursday, there's going to be two big areas to watch. One in the central US and then the other one over here along the West Coast. Another huge plume of moisture will work over the Cascades and down through California on Thursday. I mean, we've seen this happen a million times this winter, but this time it's going to be pretty unique because not only is it going to bring some rain and snow, but it's bringing a thick and tall surge of warm air that will cause the freezing level to climb thousands of feet above the ground where a lot of the snowpack has been building up. This could cause a major snowmelt event. And you throw some really heavy rain on top of that, and all this could make the flooding, avalanche, and mudslide threat even worse, especially in California as far north as Redding and as far south as Santa Barbara. Now, while that's happening, a snowstorm's going to be developing east of the Rockies in places like the Dakotas and down into Nebraska. Moderate snow will fall throughout the day as the low pressure system intensifies and moves off towards the east. And then we're going to be talking about a lot of the upper Midwest, like parts of Iowa and Minnesota, seeing heavy to moderate snow throughout the day, Thursday and into Thursday night, while areas near and south of St. Louis are going to be seeing all rain. And the farther south you go on Thursday, the better chance some of this rain comes along with some embedded thunder as well. An area of potentially severe storms will be dancing around the Dallas metro points north and east throughout the day. This will actually pose a pretty significant flooding threat if the storms train over some of these areas that have been doused with heavy rain over the past few days. But as we go into Friday, the storms will move out of that area and head east. Additionally, the snow will slide into the Great Lakes region. And after dumping some downright daggone heavy snow in Wisconsin on Friday, the snow is going to get a little bit lighter as it moves across Michigan. This is happening because the low pressure system is weakening, and it'll continue to weaken as it heads east towards Pennsylvania and New York. But by midnight, yolometers are going to be measuring anywhere between 1 to 4 inches of snow across the central part of Michigan, and maybe even closer to 3 to 6 inches back towards southern Wisconsin and the tri-state connection with Iowa and Minnesota. I'm kind of being conservative here with my forecast. A lot of models are saying there could be more snow than this. I'm just letting you know what I think is realistic. And then let's go back to the south. Once again, it's all rain on Friday. The storms are expected to be less intense, but a rumble of thunder or two will probably spook a few of you out here around Memphis, Atlanta, or even Charleston, South Carolina. But look out west. Our atmospheric river is still raging on, now impacting a much larger chunk of the country. We're going to see that pesky white stuff falling from the sky all the way over here in Iowa, Montana, Wyoming, and of course along the Rockies. But listen, by the time this thing is all said and done, some places in California will have picked up an additional 2 to 8 inches of rain. And of course, this is terrible news for the people who will be inevitably impacted by flooding, but this is great news for California overall. I think we're on the verge of seeing the California drought being completely wiped out by this year's insane moisture dump. I mean, just look at this satellite comparison of California in October of 2022 versus now. We've gone from being in a multi-year extreme drought to having one of the deepest snowpacks on Earth. And believe it or not, early Saturday, we might get a brief breakout here. It's not going to stop raining and snowing, but it's going to become a little bit less intense as that most recent plume of moisture is going to be working over the Rockies to cause another storm in the central US. More snow can be expected in the upper Midwest on Saturday, but this one looks less intense than the one that's coming earlier in the week, which, by the way, that storm's going to be exiting the East Coast on Saturday, leaving a narrow strip of anywhere between 2 to 5 inches of snow between Buffalo, New York and the New York City area by late Saturday evening. And at the same time, a new area of showers and thunderstorms will be developing in the central US. Regardless of the severity of the storms, the main threat with this storm system will come Sunday, as even more heavy downpours will persist across the area through the afternoon. Between now and Sunday evening, places along the Red River Valley, through the Mississippi River Valley, and even into portions of Dixie Alley could see 2 to 7 inches of rain or more. Some of that's going to fall very fast. It's going to be what we call a gully washer, okay? And if it falls fast enough, we will see widespread, if not widespread, then at least isolated flash flooding in communities. So if you live in a flood-prone area, please take this seriously. Now, as we go into next week, the real pattern for the rest of the month is going to start to lock in. This winter so far has been a wacky one for sure. After having that record-breaking cold blast in December, it's actually been a pretty mild January and February for much of us across the US. It's actually been starting to feel like spring in many of these places out east. I measured 80.6 degrees Fahrenheit in Kentucky in February the other day. And in fact, in some ways, it actually is spring. The National Phenology Network is reporting that many places in the southeast are already seeing budding and blooming plants, which is crazy. These buddings and bloomings are happening more than 20 days early, and in some places, it's the earliest bloom on record. This is happening in the southeast for much of the same reason we've been seeing all this severe weather this winter. There's just been a lot of really warm air and rain that's been pumping through this region, and all the plants are feeling that warmth and they're thinking, wow, it must be spring, it's time to wake up. But there is one big wrench thrown into all of this. It seems like the plants and us didn't get the memo from the groundhog that he saw his shadow earlier this February. That means 6 more weeks of winter, and it turns out that little rodent might actually be right this time. I mean, look, now the Climate Prediction Center is predicting much below average temperatures as we head deeper into March. And this could have drastic effects on the early blooming plants down in the southeast. Crops, citrus, etc. could be negatively impacted by these below average temperatures. And this is all happening because of what we talked about last month with the ripple effects from that sudden stratospheric warming event. I told y'all it'd be a minute before we figured out what happened as a result of the polar vortex literally falling apart, and here we are experiencing the full force of another blast of winter as we go into March. The first storms we need to watch as they interact with this new weather pattern next week are on opposite sides of the country. This one over yonder in the west coast will present yet another atmospheric river that pummels the Sierra and the plateaus between Monday and Wednesday. There's not a whole lot to say about this one other than it will be more of the same. Big time rain, snow, and all that stuff's going to fall across the region, leading to more flooding and overall drought relief. But of course, as we get closer to this one, I'm going to bring more details to you. But then there's this one over here on the east coast. The Euro has been showing a huge mass of cold air coming down towards the east coast between March 12th and March 14th. If this actually happens, it's going to amplify the storm system that's been bringing all the rain to the deep south and then curl it up the east coast. This could actually cause a nor'easter, maybe even a significant one, and recent model runs have been agreeing on this. The GFS actually doesn't see this storm nearly as well as the Euro, but what it does see is the major pattern change that will bring our temperatures down through the rest of March. Once again, even the Climate Prediction Center agrees with us here, stating that the next 3 to 4 weeks will be below average for the vast majority of the country. Long story short, the rest of March is going to be colder and snowier than February. But who's going to get the snow and where will it be the coldest? That's what we've still got to dive into and nail down as we go forward. And guess what? You can help me do that with your own personal weather data. Have you ever wanted to have your very own home personal weather station? Like something that you can put in your backyard that tells you in real time what the dew point, temperature, wind speed, and direction and all that good stuff is? Well, guess what? I have figured out which one is actually the best, and I have acquired them for our site, shopryanhall.com. It's called the Tempest Weather System. I put one of these bad boys up a few weeks ago, and it works like a dream. As a weather enthusiast since birth, I've had a lot of these things, and this is by far the easiest one to install, and it just looks the best. It doesn't look like a big doomaflachi up there, you know what I'm saying? Not only that, but the app is daggone great. It also keeps up with all of your historical weather data in these really cool charts. And the coolest part is, if you opt in, you can share all of this weather data that you're collecting with the National Weather Service and ultimately me, so that we can make our algorithms and forecasting services even better in the future. We also have a bunch of cool accessories on the site, including these smaller portable weather meters. These handheld devices sync up with your phone and can give you weather info on the go. Here's a video of me testing one out in a severe thunderstorm in Tennessee the other day. I forgot to screen record on my phone, but that was a 50-mile-an-hour wind gust. So y'all, this is the real deal. There is no better personal weather station on the market. And if you've ever wanted one, the time to get one is right now, because for our launch, we're going to do an exclusive 5% off offer for the next 24 hours. Go to shopryanhall.com or click the link in the description and use the code WEATHERFLOW. And then you'll get your 5% off and it'll be great. You'll love it. I'll love it. And let's build a network a y'all network of weather stations that are just feeding in data so that we can do awesome things in the future. You guys are going to absolutely love this thing. And that's pretty much all I have for you for today's weather report. Make sure you slap the like button, subscribe. Huge shout out to all of our channel members. And of course, I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye. Ooh.